Thank management of Yashoda Group of Hospitals for launching HPV-DNA test in Telangana. I think that's the need of our Dr. Shanta really covered the topic very well, where address why we really need this test to reduce the disease burden in totality. So next 10 minutes, I'll take you through common myths around cervical cancer because some of the points Madam already have covered, but I think just go one myth by one myth. I think that's where we really could address certain the notions, certain thoughts, certain beliefs we really thinking about when it comes to cervical cancer. Just before start, this is the topic, the incidence rate that we are talking about. Close to 60,000 deaths reported that reported in 2018, and I think it's like incidence is way far ahead from any other countries in the world. In fact, more than China as well, because consider the China's population is around more than us, but they reported just around 56,000 around, and we are 50,000, and we are standing around now 96,000 new cases every year. So that's the challenge, and I think how best we can reduce is, I think the awareness is the key here, and I think we as a team, we as a group, I think everyone has a responsibility towards to minimize the disease burden and by creating the awareness around it. So, a lot of misinformation, misconceptions regarding the causes, the symptoms, the treatment of cervical cancer, and a lot of discussions happening around. And there is, because of not having the awareness, not having exactly what's happening, ignoring the symptoms that are coming up, and that lead to the advancement of the disease and then lead to the diagnosis of cancer. I think that's where the awareness is very much critical, and awareness is the key, I think, to understand what this is all about, what are those symptoms, where the interventions is really required. So let's bust myths one by one. I'll take you to, there are so many myths, I'll just taken out the 5 out of those. Let's bust those myths and spread the awareness. And then you being a champion, you being the torch bearer, I think we all of us, I think let's spread that awareness around the disease and busting all those myths around the disease. The first myth, right? The cervical cancer cannot be prevented, right? I think Madam already covered this one in her topic. I would say this is one of those few cancers that untreatable forms of cervical cancer, as long as it's detected early and managed effectively. So it's the key word here is how best we can detect those changes happening in the cervix at the early stage of those transforming infections. How best we can do this? Yes, health checkup, that's must. Every year we should do that. And now we have to add one screening test for cervical cancer. Do it regularly. So if you see like what are various modalities available, it's not like every year you have to go for cervical cancer test, screening test. But earlier we used to follow the pap smear, right? That has to be like 2 to 3 years time. Now with this high performance, high sensitive, with a good clinically validated test like HPV-DNA test, so we could do, once the test is negative, there is a 5 years gap for the second test to be done, right? So that's the duration between the two tests. If you could spare time or test that's come negative, then you have to go for the next test only after 5 years. So that's the duration we are talking between the two tests if the first test come negative. Regular screening detects the abnormality of cervix at early stage, and its progression into cancers can be prevented. If we really check any abnormality happening in the cervix, I think then immediately the gynecologist could take appropriate treatment options to prevent the progression of this one. So, and even if like whatever varies the screening and the prevention modality, the WHO also recommended the vaccinations by 15 years of age. As Madam rightly said, it's not only vaccination, the vaccinations followed by screening at regular interval, that holds the key, and that really help us to minimize the disease burden in the long term and significantly reduces the disease burden in the long term. What's the second myth? Cervical cancer is hereditary and causes not known. Right? Unlike breast cancer or ovarian cancer, cervical cancer is not a hereditary cancer, right? So various studies, various this one, and madam already said that the person who invented this one, the causality between the HPV infection and the cervical cancer, got a Nobel Prize. It's well established. The causality is well established. More than 99% have HPV infections. Patient who are cervical cancer patient have HPV infection in the past, and that infection led to the transformation in the cervix that lead to progression of disease and end up in cervical cancer. So HPV estimated is the most common sexually transmitted infections. 80% men and women could get infection in their lifetime. Not to worry, HPV infection may remain in the body without any signs and symptoms. So if HPV test comes negative, it doesn't mean you have a woman have a disease. So it may in the body without any signs and symptoms. As madam said, there are more than 100 strains of HPV genotypes available. Out of these 16-18 genotypes is the most commonly reported genotype that contributes to 70% of cervical cancer. The third myth, the HPV infections clear up on its own, right? To certain extent, yes. Up to 85 to 90% HPV infections clear on its own, or go back to the earlier stage of the infection. So that's good. But if you see like the 10% cases that really moved on to the advanced stage and that lead to the cancer. And when we talk about the 60,000 deaths, 96,000 new cases happening every year, that means you can see how much this 10% contributes to, right? So there are 2.2 lakh cases overall reported. That's the prevalence that we're talking about across India. So that 10% contributes so much disease burden when we talk about the cervical cancer. Yes, it clears on its own, but I think that we really have to consider on the rest 10% cases. The persistent infections may lead to the progressions to the advanced stage of abnormality in the cervical epithelium that lead to the invasive stage. That is what we call as the cervical cancer. The regular screening as recommended by various guidelines. There is not a single guidelines now talking about the earlier era of tests like pap smear. I do agree the pap smear really helped us to reduce the cancer-related deaths and the incidence to the significant level, because if you see like the data published from 1960 versus to 2016, the crude incidence rate is reduced by 21%, but still having reduced by 21%, and we're still facing the challenges of the number of deaths every year. As I said earlier, regular screening as recommended by guidelines help us to identify women at risk very at the right time before it really progresses to the cervical cancer stage or invasive stage. So just to brief you how this screening works, there are 4 stages of development of cancer, right? So I think madam has showed there are 4 stages. One is infection. That doesn't mean that they have a disease, just the infection. If that infection persisted for years and that lead to the transformation of the cervical epithelium at the upper layer of cervix, that lead to the progressive dysplasia. Dysplasia means the abnormality in the cells, and that lead to the invasion of all these abnormality cells into the next layer of the cervix, and that lead to the invasive cancer. So when it comes to, as I said, there are 3-4 stages of in the histological or cytological levels. You must have seen that SIN1, SIN2, that is cervical intraepithelial neoplasia, that is SIN1 level, SIN2 level, and SIN3 level. So it's good to have a test who is really clinically validated to detect those cases in a SIN1 and SIN2, and that really help gynecologists to take a very evidence-based approach before that infections lead to the transformation, lead to the invasive cancer. So when I said HPV infection clear on its own, if you see like most of the 85 to 90%, even if it is SIN1 and SIN2 or SIN3, go back to the earlier stage or clear on its own. But those are cases in the SIN3 level, as I said, where if you see the number 4 stage, before 3 and 4, between 3 and 4, that lead to really high chances that this woman could go into the cervical cancer stage or invasive cancer. So if you see that if you concentrate on 10 to 12%, I think that's where the challenge is, how best we can avoid these women who are really going from SIN2 to SIN3 and SIN3 to the advanced stage of the disease. And all these modalities, what we are talking about, The HPV-DNA test is a clinically validated test to detect those SIN1 and SIN2 cases, and that really help gynecologists to take appropriate forward treatment. The myth 4, the normal pap smear results doesn't mean no more screening is required. That's not true. Screening at regular interval required. As I said, the recommendation for pap smear is every 2 to 3 years. Means you have to go for regular screening every 2 to 3 years pap smear. If HPV DNA test, you have more freedom because of high performance, high sensitivity, high negative predictive value that really gives a good duration between the two tests, like 5 years. And there is a data. Now this is really, I would say, data. There is eye opener because the number of cases the cervical cancer reported, when we checked, these authors checked their earlier screening data, they actually have up to 33% women actually have a normal pap data. Now, if you see like the India coverage, there is very recently article published for India, how much percentage we have a coverage when it comes to screening. It is around just 28%. It varies from 8% to 42%, but it's just like standing at around 28% screening coverage. Means women go at least for one time for a screening test. That's where we stand today. So no screening required if HPV vaccination is done. I think Madam already covered whether it's vaccination done or not done. I think the screening has to be done, and it goes hand in hand. Screening, vaccination should be implemented. So this is SDG and its WHO goal 90, 70, 90. 90% means out of those detected cases that should get treatment. The 70% stands where the madam has said this has to that at least a woman between 35 to 45 years age that should be screened, and they used one word, should be screened with high precision test. High precision test means like when we start from like pap to HPV test, high precision test that should have a good performance, good sensitivity, and a good negative predictive value, negative predictive value. So these are 4 steps: screening, colposcopy, biopsy, and treatment. Right? Screening to identify signs of disease in asymptomatic woman. Colposcopy is magnified look at the cervix and see the abnormality. If there is abnormality, take the biopsy and check whether there is really a cancerous lesion or not. If it is there, then appropriate treatment to be followed. So these are the principles of cervical cancer. Screen with the high percentage, that is HPV-DNA test, triage to check whether they are really fit into that SIN1, SIN2 criteria or SIN3 criteria. If you find that there is abnormality, then only go for colposcopy. This is all just to minimizing the unnecessary intervention, because that's always a challenge. There is a social reasons, some timing issues and other things. To get out of this time, not to again call a woman for the follow-up visits, all these tests could be done in one visit only. So just to brief you a short on this is what we done the Roche HPV-DNA test, COVAS HPV-DNA test is the first test approved by US-FDA for first-line primary screening way back just like 3 to 4 years back. This is the only test is clinically validated. So more than 47,000. This is the largest study conducted with COVAS HPV-DNA test in close to 47,000 women. And based on that, we received all these approvals for as a first-line primary screening test for cervical cancer. It's very high on performance, more than 90% sensitivity. What is meant by sensitivity? Its ability to identify who has that elevated risk. I think that's where the sensitivity stands. More than 99% negative predictive value. When you say test is negative, that's the confidence. It's more than 99% is truly negative. The ability to identify who was not at all at risk. This is where the 14 high-risk genotypes could be identified with this COVAS HPV test. 16, 18 could be identified separately because that contributes to 70% of cervical cancer cases, and the rest 12 high risks could be identified in the pool map. This is the machines that's X480 is a fully automated sample preparation machine, and followed by the Z480 is a real-time polymerase chain reaction machine that gives a fast and accurate PCR result. So based on this Athena study, that 47,000 women study, we received a lot of recommendation almost from all eminent gynecological societies or oncology societies, and including, I think, the madam has mentioned the FOXY GCPR guideline.